Good afternoon. My name is Donna Marie Collins. I'm the hearing examiner that will be presiding over this afternoon's zoning request. Do we have members of the public here? Yes, okay. So let me explain to you, if you're not familiar with the way these zoning hearings go, the applicant's representative, the team that's representing the property owner, will be making a presentation explaining the nature of their request, the various aspects of it, and how it's consistent with the county's development regulations. Following their presentation, there'll be a presentation by the county planner that reviewed the application and prepared the staff report. The staff report in this case is a recommendation of approval with conditions. At the conclusion of the county staff's presentation, I will open up the floor to members of the public that wish to speak. If you wish to speak on the record, please come to the podium, state your name. If you wish, you can show where you live in relationship to the property, although that's not necessary, and you can share any specific concerns you may have with regard to the application. My experience is oftentimes members of the public are not completely in favor or opposed to a project, but they have specific concerns. If you share them with us, you give us an opportunity to have the parties explain in better detail, or we can come up with a condition that might address your concerns. You can come and speak as long as you like, but you're only allowed to speak once. Once I close public input, you have to take your seat. Also, you don't have to speak if you don't wish to, but if you'd like to receive a copy of my recommendation in this case, please fill out one of those forms on the side, and we will, via email, provide you with a copy of my recommendation, and through that method, you will receive notice of the final hearing on this case before the Board of County Commissioners. They are the final decision makers. I am preparing a recommendation for their consideration based on all the testimony and evidence that come in at this hearing. All right. All testimony and evidence that we take in at these hearings must be taken in under oath, so if you intend to speak on the record, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you enter into the record in this hearing will be the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam
I'm ready to begin.
Sorry. Madam Hearing Examiner, I have the affidavit of publication for the hearing.
Okay, very good. This will be Staff Exhibit 2. Staff Exhibit 1 is the staff report. Just give me a minute to mark this. And just to let the parties know, I did receive applicant's 48-hour notice. That is applicant Exhibit 1. So any exhibits that come in after that will be starting with the number 2. All right, I'm ready to begin.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Wayne Arnold, certified planner with Pick Dawson and Associates here in Bonita Springs. We have offices in Fort Myers as well. You know our development team, I think other than maybe Scott Merzinger. Scott Merzinger is with Trinity Commercial Group and is assisting the property owner today. Tim Paul is the applicant. He unfortunately could not be with us today, but obviously Neil Montgomery, our land use attorney. I'm Wayne Arnold. Mike Dellett, who's testified here before, civil engineer. Marco Espinar, the biologist, and Jim Banks, our traffic engineer. So I have a couple of copies. I know, if I recall, the last time I was here, you like hard copies of the presentation. So I have a couple of those for you and a couple larger exhibits of the master plan.
Wonderful.
So this is case number DCI2024-00006. And it's the State Road 31, Caloosahatchee Ridge, RPD. And location of this 102-acre property is west side of State Road 31, north of State Road 80, Palm Beach Boulevard, portion of the site is adjacent to the Caloosahatchee River, and it's just south of the Caloosahatchee River Bridge. And
Okay, go back, give me a second.
so, it's my corner, if that's okay. So intersection of Palm Beach Boulevard, State Road 31, and again here, you probably are familiar with some of the proposed FDOT improvements for the State Road 31 and Palm Beach intersection.
Eagerly
improvements.
awaiting the improvements.
Yes. And we are too. So again, it's 102 plus or minus acres. We're requesting 520 total dwelling units. I think staff report in some places, I think we've asked for 520, some is 521. We had 520 on our last revision because there was a slight correction to the acreage under the ERP permit that was recently approved, and we reflected a slight reduction by
So
one
what's the
unit.
final number?
We're saying it's 520. Unless staff really wants us to push for a higher number, because we would qualify for a slightly higher number under the comprehensive plan, but we're fine with the 520 request. So we've requested all unit types, which included single-family, detached, two-family, multifamily, townhouse, et cetera. This was our density calculation sheet where we came up with 520.94 units as our maximum. After the ERP staff did its calculation, which you probably saw in the staff report, concluded that we could actually have requested up to 536 units to be consistent with Lead Plan Policy 1.1.5 and 1.5.1, which is calculation that talks about the suburban land use category, allowing a 6 unit per acre density. We also have wetlands that we're transferring density from under that policy at 6 units per acre to parts of the property that will be developed. So we're taking 0 units for the 11.26 or 11.4 acres of impact to wetlands on the site. So the site, as we said, we included the ERP in the 48-hour letter, and I'll go over a couple of those changes at the end, just might make it flow a little better. This is your existing future land use map. Green is what's considered wetlands under your GIS system. The suburban is the gold crosshatch, and we did a prior land use administrative map amendment that staff acknowledged. They had this portion of the site here that's adjacent to FP&L property designated as industrial, and staff determined that that was just a clear mapping error, so it became suburban since it was not a wetland.
All right, so on the map, though, it's all shown as suburban. It's not shown as wetlands, I don't think, is it?
The green is what's considered wetlands under your future land use map. We're in for a map revision that I believe was completed today by staff, and that map is going to look more like this. I don't know if that's the exact one. I had this from our dealings with
Okay,
Mr.
so
Burr.
this represents the revised map.
It does, and I think your staff may have a corrected version that's the official one.
Okay.
Yeah, I have that for the record.
Yeah. It doesn't really affect the density calculation. It really just cleans up. As you can see, this finger of green that was going out to the river, this is all a big ridge, and I should just explain that the river is dredged, not recently, but it has been dredged in the past, and there's a spoil pile that was established all along this area. So this area is actually higher along the river than other portions of the property along the river because of those spoil banks that were created. And this becomes kind of a bowl, and then you can see over here along State Road 31, there's already more uplands, and then you see, I get to the ERP plan, but you can see that we're impacting a couple of those areas. This is our proposed master concept plan. We have a large area of, we're not calling it preserve on this plan, we're calling it open space wetland. That's all of this hatching area, and a little sliver. One of the prominent features is this easement corridor that goes through the property and on down to Florida Power and Light. It's a 50-foot wide gas line easement that serves Florida Power and Light. So they bring in, at the marina, they bring in a barge, they bring in fuel, and then it gets pumped under the property in a pipeline. And we're allowed to cross the pipeline, and we're not allowed to build on the pipeline. So we have, along State Road 31 here, we have a primary access point shown at this location, lines up with what used to be the little lounge across the street. There's been some discussion, not by me, but with others with FDOT about that being a full intersection when they redo State Road 31 because of the Neal Communities has access in the same location. We're showing a secondary access point, a right in, right out in this lower portion. We believe this probably will become either a townhome project or apartments in this location. It's designated an R2 tract, and that's where we're proposing a 50-foot maximum height. This primary road will extend all the way west across the Florida Power and Light easement area and to a larger development tract with amenities that we're calling the R1 tract. That's where we've proposed the deviation to allow up to 75 feet in height. All this area in between remains open space, and it's a wetland. In our ERP, it's considered to be a wetland, but there's actually no native vegetation in that location. It's all exotic vegetation. So the mitigation will be to remove all of those exotic vegetation, let it reestablish as whatever native wetland grass and shrubs that it may become. But that's all a part of
And there's a replanting component with that?
I'll let Marco get into that.
That was not clear to me when I read the applicant's presentation on that in the staff report, and I read the staff's review. It wasn't clear to me whether it was just going to clear it out and let it repropagate on its own, or there was going to be supplemental planting. I'd like that clarified.
Would you like to hear from Marco Espinar now, or would you?
In the course of the presentation is fine.
Okay, we'll get to that for sure then. So, and obviously, that was an interesting aspect because there was really no indigenous vegetation on the site, but we have kept everything that was going to be preserved in the ERP permit as open space wetland on this site. We have acreages on there that add up. Staff has indicated one of the conditions providing a certain amount of open space, which we were okay with that condition. We had no objection. Just to point out, there was a slight change right here. You can see this area of preserve actually extended a little farther to the east in this area. We pulled that back as part of the final calculations on the ERP, and that's why I reduced the request to 520 units. Point out just some of the other features. We have water management. We've got a 50-foot wide natural water body buffer that we've provided. We also have a condition that indicates that we'll have a 70-foot total building setback from the shoreline, if you will. I think those are kind of the highlights. We have a proposed interconnection down to Wildwood Lane here. There was some discussion early from FDOT about wanting to extend Wildwood Lane down and serve some of the commercial that's destined to be at the intersection of State Road 80 and State Road 31. Don't know if that'll happen, but we made a provision for potential interconnection there if that road becomes something that has some reality to it. Color versions, just a little easier to look at if you want to go back and refer to anything. We'll come back to this exhibit. But again, you can see the two development tracks identified as R1 and R2. Each one has its own amenity areas. We've labeled AA. And then, of course, internal water body. A sliver of the about 3 acres of the project actually extends into the Caloosahatchee River, but obviously no density was taken for that ownership.
Does this site plan take into account the improvements to 31? Or will the site be impacted by those
The
improvements?
site may be impacted. We just don't know. There's been no notice of taking provided to our property owner.
There's no drawings available yet?
The drawings, I'll let Mr. Banks address that, but the exhibits we've seen have gone back and forth. For instance, they had a full, not at grade, they were going to do like an interchange down at State Road 80, and I've heard that that's no longer on the table. They're going to make at-grade improvements, so all of the right-of-way needs there have changed. We saw an exhibit.
It's going to be an at-grade improvement now, or it's going to be?
That's what we hear. I'll let
Okay.
Jim tell you a little bit more about that, or maybe even Scott
But you're
knows more
set
about
back
that.
from that.
Yes.
I'm just wondering about the road
Along
cross
State
section.
Road
Yeah.
31. I don't know for sure. Like I said, they haven't provided an order of taking. They have apparently made contact, an appraiser has made contact, I know, with the county and our property owner, but I don't think there's a definitive area of taking yet. So there could be impacts to the site plan, but you know, a portion of it is this open space preserve area. This area we provided for a 15-foot wide buffer and a development tract. I mean, I could see the future improvements, you know, easily taking part of the landscape buffer and a portion of that R2 tract. Proposed uses, pretty standard here. As I mentioned, we're asking for accessory uses, the dwelling units I mentioned, single family, two family, duplex, townhouse. Excavation areas are entrance gates, potential, fences, walls, recreation facilities, private, and fences, of course, and rental leasing offices in the event that we have a apartment complex. Proposed development standards, hard to read. Probably the highlights are here. For the multifamily, we requested on the R1 tract closer to the river, 75-foot height. The R2 tract, a 50-foot height. And that's taken care of with the deviation that staff is supporting, and I'll go through that momentarily, which is here. It shows you that it applies on the R1 tract, and we specified the one change I made that was in the 48-hour letter too, that probably typographical, but it came out as tracts K2 instead of R2 and R1, so clarifying those. But our under the Lee plan, 45 feet is the standard height, and we're allowed to seek heights up to 75 feet if we can demonstrate that we've met the deviation criteria. And in this case, we've prepared a cross-section for staff. We had no access to the single family here, but we did have access to the condominium buildings down here at Bay Point. It's about 1,300 feet to where our closest building could be. And we prepared a cross-section that showed that 1,300 foot plus our setback, the natural water body buffer, obviously some landscaping. We don't really reflect it, but all of that shoreline has a mangrove fringe on it. And then you can see here in front of our property, there's this linear mangrove island that provides some additional protection for views. But I think the shortest view, even from here to here, is about 1,000 feet. So we think that given the road improvements on State Road 31, where at least the last we heard, they're going to be fixed, it will be a fixed bridge. It's probably going to be up to 75 feet in height for the bridge structure. And then they're going to elevate State Road 31 as a hurricane evacuation route. So we believe that once you make those State Road 31 improvements, the increased height, the 5 feet on the R2 tract is probably indistinguishable from whether it's 45 feet or 50 feet. And then the 75 feet, you probably won't see that from the, you will see that from the road if they make the elevated improvements, but that again was across, on our property, it's over 1,000 feet from the road. So we're 1,000 feet from the road, more than 1,000 feet from the nearest homes to the west. So we believe that the 75 feet is good. We have the boat barn to the north that you're probably familiar with. Some of the FP&L structures to the southwest are also tall, and then had our surveyor stop by and measure the height of the Lee Civic Center, and that building's about 77 feet tall. So in the vicinity, we're not out of character with that. We think it makes sense to allow these residences along the river to enjoy some river views. Here's some imaging that we did showing potential building in the background. This is taken from that Bay Point condominiums to the south where I showed the cross section. Again, show you what's going on in the surrounding area. Here were the Bay Point across the river where we took those images. And then you're, I think, pretty familiar with everything that's going on. There's a series of commercial down at the intersection. Neal Communities had 31 Oaks and the Oaks at Twin Lakes, the Caloosahatchee Palms, and, just going on State Road 31. There's a significant amount of development that's occurring on that corridor. So this isn't an isolated rural area, and certainly won't be once a lot of the other state road improvements are completed. Again, as I just mentioned, this is a little closer image to see all that's going on in the corridor north and south of the river. But again, clearly an urbanizing area. There's water and sewer available to the site. So that clearly is going to support more of an urban designation rather than the ag zoning that it is today. We did a pretty extensive Lee plan analysis. That's part of the narrative background. I've got a lot of these policies. I'm not going to mention all of them, but the principal one that we already talked about was establishing the density for the property under the two policies. One is your wetland policy that allows us to transfer density off of wetlands that are not being impacted, and then the other that are the suburban upland areas could be up to 6 units per acre. So those two calculations together come up with 536 acres. We're asking for 536 units, I'm sorry. We're asking for 520 units, so we're within the LEAP plan policy for density. As I mentioned, we have water and sewer to the site, residential development. In portion of the site is in the coastal high hazard area. But as I mentioned, it's really odd because all the areas along the river are the spoil piles and are not in the coastal high hazard area. The coastal high hazard area is largely in the middle where we have the wetlands that are going to be preserved. It's kind of a unique designation for the coastal high hazard, but all of these get elevated out of the floodplain. So there's really not going to be an issue for residences. And I said, with State Road 31 improvements planned, you have a road corridor that can then carry those people safely in the event of a hurricane evacuation. Caloosahatchee Shores Community Plan, which we're within, talks about maintaining the character and natural resources. And again, I think the slide I showed you with all that's going on in the corridor, it's not really, this portion is not really a rural area, but also given the high amount of open space that we have on the site that's been conditioned by staff and our adjacency to the river, we don't think that there's an issue in terms of compliance with the plan, and staff concurs with that. Natural systems and the water management system, you'll hear both Marco Espinar and Mike Dellett talk about how we've incorporated these natural features as part of our drainage system. And again, this has been through an extensive review by the Water Management District for both the impacts to wetlands and the water management system, which you'll hear about that later. The open space areas, as I mentioned, we exceed the minimum required open space, and staff has conditioned that we'll have at least 49.28 acres of the 102-acre site as open space. So we've exceeded your open space standard, and we'll have to reflect that on any development order plans that come forward. Highlight here would be development sort of limited to density of 1 unit per 20 acres in wetlands. And as I said, we impact a little over 11 acres of wetlands, and we're not claiming any density consideration for that. And then again, cleaning up and preserving the other, what are very poor quality wetlands today. Stormwater management, I know it's a big issue for everybody. Mike Dellett has a few slides that he'll go through with you to talk about how we're in compliance with policy 126.1 with our surface water design. So public services, this sort of gives you an idea. We're located here. And you can see just in the general vicinity all that we have. We have fire stations. The Forest Service has facilities there. We have Bayshore Fire across the river, medic station here. I think we're well served by a lot of those type public emergency services. Schools in the vicinity, we have Buckingham, Riverdale, River Hall, Orange River, Okamic, and several other schools. A lot of parks and recreational opportunities in the area as well, including the Manatee Park that's very busy today, I hear, because of the cold weather, but other libraries and schools that are in the vicinity of the project. Employment and shopping, I don't have to tell you, I think you're familiar with that corridor, but there's a lot going on that area and growing with the Babcock Ranch to the north and more things coming. The Greenwell project, when it starts developing, has several 100,000 square feet of commercial that will be coming online as well that will provide more employment and shopping. Scott and his group did a series of drone photographs early on in the process, and just sort of, we tried to label these consistent with the general view. So this is State Road 31, looking toward the river, the boat barns here. Our property ends somewhere in here. But you can see, obviously, the river here and dense vegetation that's there. That's all exotic vegetation today. It doesn't provide really any habitat value. Looking west, you can certainly see across the river here were those Bay Point condos that we were looking for. Oops, sorry. Another southwest view, FP&L back here. You can see, and you're familiar with that. Boat barn, a little closer in view. again, this one, I pulled this one just to highlight those mangrove islands that we have and this mangrove shoreline that's going to remain intact with our project. You can see here the FP&L easement that's coming through the site, the pipeline easement. Again, State Road 31 looking back to State Road 80 intersection here, and a lot of this is scheduled to be commercial development in the near future. Again, looking north, highlighting the fact that we've got the islands here. Boat Barn to our north is our closest neighbor. And that's kind of in a nutshell the overview of where we are, and then we thought we'd go through and have Marco Espinar talk to you a little bit more about the environmental stuff, and then followed by Mike Dellett and then Jim Banks. And if you have any other questions, just feel free.
Thank you.
And if you want my pointer. Sorry about the noise.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Marco Espinar, Collier Environmental Consultants. I've been a biologist in South Florida for almost 40 years. As Wayne stated, this is kind of a very unusual project. Back in the 1960s, the river was dredged, and all that dredged material was placed on our subject property along the shoreline, creating kind of a mountain effect throughout the whole river area. That was from the 1960s. Fast forward several decades, that fill has slowly, with the rains, came out like tributary over the parcel of land. In addition to that, as Wayne stated, in the early 2000s, FPL came in and did a 50-foot easement, basically bisecting our parcel, having the spoil material mounds on the west side of the FPL easement and kind of isolating that wetland, huge wetland, on the right side. The wetland is a huge wetland. It meets all the definitions of jurisdictional wetlands, but it is of very, very, very poor quality. It is severely infested with exotics. However, that being said, to answer specifically your questions, we did not know ecologically how that wetland was going to react. And the reason I'm saying that is being so close to the shoreline and being historically isolated with the fill and then the FPL easement, it has changed the characteristics of some of the vegetation in that wetland. So if you were to, right now, it's going to be almost 100%, not quite 100%, but let's say about almost 80 to 90% exotics. But underneath that, you have a mixture of both brackish vegetation and freshwater vegetation. So we did not know ecologically really which way, once we remove these exotics out of there, which way is it going to go? Is it going to go more into that brackish conditions with, for instance, leather fern, buttonbush, or is it going to go more into the freshwater characteristics? So we had this debate with the Water Management District, and it's in our permit that what we were going to do to try to be fair to everybody and ecologically was let's remove those exotics and let's see naturally what comes in. And there was in the ERP permit, there was a 24-month window of which let the exotics be removed and let's see what naturally comes in. So if we see that it is brackish vegetation, then at the end of 2 years, it has to be 80% vegetated with those vegetation, with that vegetation. If it's more freshwater, then we go this way. But it was an opportunity to let the area actually heal itself and see what naturally will come back, in its place. I thought that we thought it was fair for everybody and ecologically for that area. What we also did is we limited our wetland impacts to the poor wetland impacts closer towards the road, and we try to do this all as one big, if you saw it, like a big amoeba, big, huge preserve. Other than that, we did get our ERP permit from the Water Management District. We have gone out to public notice with the Corps. We are currently finalizing our Corps permits. We have not had any objections per se by any of the regulatory agencies, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or the Game Commission. The only concern that they did have was not to clear the land and leave it lay fallow, because they were afraid that if we clear the land and leave it lay fallow, it actually may create conditions for like the lease terms. So they were like, guys, just do us a favor. When you clear, just clear and then go into, construction as soon as I can. Just don't clear it and leave it fallow. Other than that, like I said, we got our water management district permit and we're about to finalize our core. I don't know if you have any specific questions.
Go through your slides.
I'm sorry?
Want to go through your slides?
Oops. Here's our district permit. Sorry, thank you.
So you have your ERP, the core permit is pending, you're toward the end of that
Yes.
process.
Yes.
Could be issued before or after the final board hearing at this point.
Knowing the core, when's the board hearing? We don't know yet. So I don't know. We don't know yet. With the core, they are slow, but everything in the where's your pointer? This is all the wetlands here. This is the preserve right here. Like I said, so we limited our wetland impacts to this area here. Like I said, they're both of them are poor quality wetlands, but we between the two, we thought would have more ecological significant impact by preserving that whole entire area and limiting our impacts to this. This is kind of my summary of what I just stated. I don't know of any more specific questions.
No, thank you for the explanation.
Thank
One question, if I may.
Sure.
So during the review of the wetlands, we didn't have the ERP during our review, so
Right.
we didn't have the state permit.
Right.
We were asking questions about saltwater wetland versus freshwater wetland. So in your testimony, you were talking about how you're gonna remove the exotics and let it heal and see if it's brackish or if it's fresh.
Yes.
How is that going to affect your density?
Well, and you stated salt water. We're not saying it's salt water. We're saying it may be slightly brackish, which is just at the edge of between fresh water and salt water. So it's not salt water. It's brackish. It may just have slightly higher salinity than your normal freshwater marshes. But personally, I think it will be turning more into a freshwater marsh because of the isolated nature of the FPL easement, and that occurred for like over 30 years, that it has kind of cut that barrier and made a barrier there as far as.
Because you right now, the way this stands right now is that we're getting density off of the preserved freshwater wetland.
Yes.
At a suburban rate of 6 units per acre. But if it's salt, then
It's
you
not
can't
salt.
do that.
It's not
That's
salt.
a LEED plan, that's a comp plan thing, so I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring the attention.
But more specifically, it's not salt. We're not in the coastal area. We're not on the coastal saltwater area. We're way back into the river where it's, like I said, it may be slightly brackish, not necessarily salt. And
West of the locks, correct?
I'm sorry?
West of the locks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Actually, Mike just made an excellent point. With the Water Management District, we are preserving everything on site and getting recognition for that as mitigation. For the Corps, they don't want the preserves on site. They want they want mitigation off site at a mitigation bank. And in this case, once everything is finalized, if credits are required, they will be freshwater credits.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Mike Dellett. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Florida with RDA Consulting Engineers. I've practiced engineering in Southwest Florida for about 35 years, and I've appeared before the hearing examiner in the past. Just maybe quickly bouncing over to the question about freshwater versus brackish or saltwater. I'll just kind of skip to this plan. I'll come back to what I'm talking about. But the way the water management system is designed, when the pointer at the top. So this large wetland that Marco was alluding to, the treated and attenuated stormwater discharges from this basin here, this lake will go in here, and also from lakes on the west basin. So they're going to be hydrating this with fresh water. And we went through quite an analysis with the Water Management District on the effects of the discharge into that wetland. They wanted it to be hydrated that way. So even if there is some influence from the river, the predominant discharge will be fresh water into that wetland. So over time, it's going to turn more fresh water.
The fresh water is coming from the stormwater runoff onto the impervious areas.
Yeah, so that'll get treated in the lake over here and dry retention areas, and that gets discharged into here. And the same thing on this other basin. The water
And
gets.
then ultimate outfall to
Sure.
the river?
Sure, so under this proposed road, we'll have a large culvert system, and then this discharge pipe and ditch system goes out to the river. And by the way, that, and I'll get into that in a second, but that's where FDOT will discharge as well for State Road 31 eventually through here. So I'll just return back to the slide. So just kind of an overview of the existing drainage system out there. You've heard the discussion about the large spoil pile that runs along here and kind of bifurcates the site. Right now, the water kind of drains in that wetland area slowly down to an existing ditch that runs east-west here along a spoil bank, and then it connects up to an existing outfall ditch that you could see on the aerial that goes out. So that collects most of that water from the east side. There also is a swale or ditch, whatever you want to call it, along the west side of State Road 31. That traverses down through most of the edge of the property, and then down toward the southeast corner here, kind of cuts across, and it's pretty visible on the aerial images. And I'll get into what happens there. So that's kind of how that water's handled, but most of that on the east side is traveling west over to this outfall. And we'll go to the proposed condition.
Explain the existing ditch.
Yeah, so the existing ditch that Marco alluded to that we're going to impact, that runs east-west. We believe that was an old mosquito ditch that was went through there, mosquito
So
control
is
ditch.
FDOT doing a retention pond somewhere that's gonna outfall down that ditch, or?
Yeah, so we've coordinated with FDOT's engineers. They're kind of in a hold pattern right now. They've not responded to their ERP application they put in over a year and a half ago, but their plans preliminarily show a treatment pond down in this area, and then they want to connect to the ditch that comes out through here. Of course, that goes through the middle of the property.
They're gonna pipe it from the swale out to that, a pond there?
Yeah, so they have a combination of, most of this is going to be, I would imagine, taken. We haven't gotten official taking notice, but they'll probably fill along most of this side here to enlarge or widen 31. And then they'll have conveyance pipes and ditches out to a treatment pond somewhere in here, and then that's going to be conveyed up to the outfall. They don't have, obviously, an ERP permit yet. They've not replied. As of last week when I checked, they had not replied to their most recent, or the only RAI comment letter from the district.
And they don't comment on your application, right?
No, they don't. But we've tried to coordinate with their engineers, so we've had some good rapport with them. It's just kind of stalled out because they're not moving any. I think they're probably trying to finalize their design now that they're not going to be, not that they're going to be at grade, it appears. So they're probably making some modifications, but in discussions with them, I mean, generally speaking, the owner can work something out with FDOT to accommodate that flow and have a joint discharge. I think that would be beneficial to everybody. And right now, if FDOT doesn't proceed with that work or comes up with a separate design, we have an ERP permit to perfect that outfall to the west. I'll go over that now. So kind of alluded to a little bit of that. We won't be impacting that ditch that exists on the north side of the entrance along State Road 31. We do have proposed, though, to keep that ditch intact, clean it up, and run it to the south along the east side of this proposed basin area. FDOT may or may not impact that, but our plan right now is to take that, and then, if you recall, it kind of shunts across like right here with a ditch. We'll be carrying that along the State Road 31 right-of-way area, but inside the property, and then picking that up with a ditch and pipe system to run it west. And at the end of this property right here, that's where the ditch re-picks up again, so we just connect back in to where the existing ditch is. So it's just a short portion here gets repiped and re-swaled. And that was approved by the Water Management District. We provided supporting calculations and modeling to show sufficient capacity for that rerouting. Again, so we'll have treated stormwater in this pond here and some dry retention. That gets delivered or discharged over to the large wetland area. And then there'll be overland sheet flow and probably the water just spreading out in this area. And then there's an outfall pipe right here, you can kind of see that. And that'll go under the proposed road, connecting road. And then from here, you can kind of see it. That's an outfall ditch and pipe system that'll go out to the river. So similarly, this basin here is independent from this basin, and this has its own lake, dry retention system. That'll similarly discharge out into the wetland area to provide hydration, and then once that gets up to a certain elevation, it's going to spread out and go out through this outfall pipe. So we worked quite a bit with the Water Management District on modeling storms that we're going to be discharging in there to prove we're not going to have any negative effect, that it would be positive, beneficial for the water management, for the preserve area, and that's incorporated in the ERP. So this is just kind of a summary that's in your packet there of what I just described, and you could go over that at your leisure.
Thank you.
But I did want to bring up the FDOT, a little more detail on that, so that's in your packet. I kind of just described that because you asked the questions, but you could review that later. That gives more detail. But in essence, working with FDOT to provide a common outfall, even though we are permitted to go through here, that's obviously something that would be beneficial to all parties.
And that's not really going to change with the recent development of them changing the configuration of the intersection with State Route 80. This is...
I don't think substantively, because it's going to be, they still have to drain to this general area and then discharge that, and they've done quite a bit of design work on that already. I can't imagine them backing out of that.
Right.
So. Did want to point out one thing, just go back. I'm not sure where the property owner is from here, but I just want to make sure that he understands that there would be no discharge to the south through this, either the water management system or the outfall pipe. The only water that gets conveyed is already kind of going through there, whatever's captured along 31, and then that existing point here, which is going to tie back into that existing swale and improve it, clean it up. But there would not be any conveyance to the south.
So it's going to come down to that existing swale, and then you're going to direct it up to the wetland, right?
No, so that let me go find an aerial here, might be more helpful. I have an aerial. Trying to find a good aerial that could kind of show that. It's so thick with vegetation in this area that nothing really stands out. But let me try to find it on a clean one here. Do you have an aerial in there, Wayne? I forget.
I can put the GIS.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great if you could do
Want
that.
me to do that?
Yeah, I thought we had an aerial that showed that. But
Here,
there you go.
zoom in.
Yeah, perfect. So you could see that the remnant ditch comes along here, along 31. And I don't know what FDOT plans to do with that. The plans I've seen had FDOT filling a good portion of that ditch and then piping it differently. But I don't think they were finalized with that. Anyways, the ditch comes around here, and then you can kind of see it angle across here, right here. So that's a ditch. So what we'll do is straighten it out along here and then just bring it back to this point and tie it in. So just
And then it'll discharge to the south?
it goes to the south, correct. And
Where's that runoff coming from mainly? The road?
Right now, there's probably a little bit of runoff from the road. It's probably just, it's so low in there. Any rainfall that collects off in the right of way kind of goes through there. And that extends up to about the marina, and then it kind of blocks up there. There's kind of a ditch block up here. So it's not a huge drainage area. You can kind of see the wet along here. Yeah. And then down here, you could kind of see the old east-west mosquito control ditch and berm that runs all the way along here. And that's where primarily the wetland impacts occur along that. We try to build on top of that berm that's there.
And at the moment, we don't know whether they're taking from the east or west side of that road when they do the widening, because it looks like neither side is really very developed.
That's correct. I suspect, I don't know for sure, but I suspect a lot of the taking is going to be on this west side. And then, because that's what the ERP plans show, but that, obviously, it's not permitted, they've never responded, so we can't say it's definitive, but conjecture is they're going to take a lot of this, then they were going to put a pond back in here, and then repipe all of this water management system, have it all come back out up here. They wanted to tie into this existing ditch, but I said we're going to relocate that to run along here.
And Mike, as long as you're up there, that beigey purple line through the middle, that's the FPNL line.
Yes, that's the gas easement that runs through there.
And the tree farm is on the FPNL property, correct?
Correct. That kind of summarizes my presentation. I'll get to Jim here. Oh, I think we lost ourselves.
Summarized by the GIS map. Hang on a second.
I'll skip ahead to the
Thank you.
transportation. Take care.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, my name is Jim Banks. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Florida and president of J&B Transportation Engineering. I've been qualified by your office on numerous past occasions as an expert in the fields of traffic and transportation engineering. And if it's acceptable to you, I will continue on.
Yes, please proceed.
My firm was responsible for preparing the traffic study for this project. And I'll get into the questions you had about State Road 31 in just a few minutes. Okay, the traffic study was prepared, and you have it on your file, was prepared pursuant to the criteria set forth by Lee County government. Your staff reviewed the study and agreed with its findings. The study that you have on file was actually based upon the proposed development of 544 residential units, and we're now requesting approval for 520. So that study slightly overstates the volume of traffic that'll be generated out of this site, but not significantly different. ITE Trip Generation Manual came out with their 12th edition recently, so we recalculated the number of trips that would be generated from this site, and that's based upon the 520 dwelling units that is now being proposed, and we determined that during the PM peak hours, it would generate 262 two-way trips. So that's both entering and exiting. That's folks that would be entering and exiting this site. The total would be 262 trips in the PM peak hour. As Wayne had mentioned, the project will have one full access on the State Road 31 that will be aligned with the Neal Communities access on the east side of State Road 31. So it will be a four-way full median opening intersection. In addition, the site will have one right-in, right-out access on the State Road 31. As I'm sure you're aware, it's currently a two-lane arterial. It's under the jurisdiction of the Florida Department of Transportation, and it is funded to be widened within the next 5 years to a 6-lane road. And one of the reasons there's a little bit of hesitation or a little bit of doubt about whether it's going to be a grade separated intersection or an at-grade intersection is FDOT completed the PD&E study about a year ago. And the PD&E study is, this is what we would really like to do. And it was from State Road 80, Bayshore, or Palm Beach Boulevard, up to State Road 78, which is Bayshore. And they say, we'd like to do 6 lanes, which that's pretty much set in stone. They're doing the 6 lanes. We need to replace the bridge, which that's going to happen, and it's going to be a 6-lane road. And they would like to do the grade separated intersection at State Road 80. If you go to the website, and I'm going to provide you documentation, they're still saying that they're going to do the grade separated intersection, but there's also been talk that maybe due to the cost of the improvements, that they might do in the interim an at-grade intersection improvement, and the interchange would come at a later date. Now, if they do select the at-grade intersection, I can assure you that they're going to have a 6-lane road tying into State Road 80. They are going to max out that intersection as an at-grade intersection to greatly improve the capacity of that intersection, because that would be the bottleneck if they don't make significant improvements at that intersection. So it's still up in the air. Again, if you go to their website, and I'm going to give you a copy of it, you'll see that they're still saying it's going to be a grade separated intersection, but it's being let out as a design build project. So what that means is they're going to be designing it, and they're going to actually start construction. So they'll start clearing out for the right of way and doing they're already purchasing for the right of way for the ultimate footprint. But it's going to be an evolving process, and some things are going to be probably modified from what the PD&E says today. So I apologize for a little bit of the uncertainty, but that's what we have, and that's all we can offer.
Well, Jim, before you leave that, you mentioned a maxed out at grade. What is that, dual lefts in every direction?
Probably be triple lefts, actually, and it would probably be most likely southbound dual right turn lanes, where that innermost or the outermost right turn lane would be still able to turn right on red, but in the inside right turn lane and the outside then also would turn on the green light. Again, that's just my expectation if it remains at grade. Hopefully, I'm hopeful that they're going to do the grade separated design that they want.
I do too, because we're improving stuff all up and down that corridor. There's only going to be more and more and more traffic.
I think what's really going to happen when they get to the 60% design and they run the cost numbers, if there's money in the budget, I think they would proceed on with the grade separated.
A grade separated intersection work there, because
Okay.
the other side is just like a little supermarket.
Right, well, they're gonna have to take right away from the supermarket, but what happens is they, and I'm not saying the supermarket would go away, they might just have to encroach a little bit into their parking area. But the design was that the eastbound traffic on Palm Beach Boulevard that would want to head north on State Road 31 would come up and over the intersection and then back down. So you would take those left turns completely out of the intersection. And also, it's possible that the southbound right turns might actually be a flyover situation as well, possibly. That's not the most critical movement. That was one of the concepts that I saw. So they would more freely merge into the westbound State Road 80 traffic. That was the concept of the flyover. And whether or not the southbound left.
Traffic heading south on 31 would go over an overpass to get onto 80
80.
heading east.
That's right. That's right. And again, that was from the PD&E study, and there were several options.
So like there's more capacity if they do the grade separated, and less capacity if they do the at grade.
That's right.
And how does that affect your project's impact on the road?
Okay, well, what we've already, and I'll get into that in just a minute.
Okay, go
Okay,
ahead.
and so, let's see, I gotta put my glasses back on.
Right now, we don't know one way or the other, though. There's only chatter, right?
Right now on their website, it says grade separated.
Okay.
There's chatter that it might be an at grade though. And so I just wouldn't want you to leave here today thinking that they're doing a grade separated and 4 years down the road, they do at grade and you say, I remember Jim Banks told me it was gonna be a grade separated. So
4 years from now, I'm probably going to be.
let's hope we're still all here and you can still curse my name. Now, we did analyze our impact on the adjacent roads, not that specific intersection, but on the adjacent roads, based upon its current configuration. And because it's a state road, the level service standard is level service D On county roads, we use level service E, but on D on state roads, especially ones that are in the part of the interstate system, because it's considered part of the interstate system because it parallels I-75. The current capacity, as adopted by the concurrency report, is 1,180 vehicles per hour in the peak direction. And at our project build out, that demand will be 1,096 vehicles per hour in the peak direction. So we're still would be operating within the level service D threshold, which, that's good.
That's in the existing condition.
Right, that's the existing condition. That doesn't necessarily address the intersection operation, but it does address the link. The link can handle the traffic. We understand that the bottleneck occurs at the intersection. But we do know that the improvements are forthcoming, whether it's the at grade or grade separated intersection improvement, as well as the 6 laning, which I will provide you documentation in just a moment. The traffic study, again, was reviewed by county staff, and they agreed with its findings that this project will not negatively impact the adjacent road network. And it was also verified that the roads, which is State Road 31, within the project, which is within the project's area of impact, currently has a surplus of capacity and can accommodate the traffic associated with this project. But again, knowing that the 6 laning is coming, we will have substantially more surplus of capacity on that road when they're done. And it was also concluded that this project will not create any transportation deficiencies that have to be mitigated specific to this project. I do have a copy, and you can go to FDOT's website. There should be somewhere on here the address link. But here's the 5-year work program. I printed this out just 3 days ago, so it should be the most current. First page is the $30 million about $30 million of right-of-way acquisition that's supposed to occur this year. And also by the year 2029, they're showing an expenditure of almost $300 million for the 6 laning and the bridge replacement. Oh, and I also wanted to, I'll submit this to you as an exhibit.
This will be applicant exhibit 4. Thank you.
So can we get back to that? How did we get to that aerial that?
So what am I looking at here?
That's FDOT's work program. Madam Hearing Examiner, I'll walk up to your desk. So this one here, if you see it, identifies State Road 31 from 80 to 78, and that is the amount that they will spend on right-of-way acquisition. It says highway right-of-way. $30 million, $29 million and some change. And this is again State Road 31 from 80 to 78. And this is the construction expenditures that will occur, they're showing they're going to initiate the project in the year 2029, and it shows $299,744,000 that will be spent on the 6 laning.
And this includes the bridge?
That is including the bridge, yes.
Okay.
That one you want, Jim?
Yes. And there was a question, and then here's a copy of the most recent, it's just 2 pages from their PD&E study, which it specifically states, I just printed this out 2 days ago, which I'm going to submit to the hearing examiner. It says that the proposed improvements consist of widening the existing 2-lane undivided roadway to a 6-lane divided roadway from State Road 80 to State Road 78, replacing the Wilson-Piggott Bridge over the Caloosahatchee River with a high-span fixed bridge. It's going to have a 55-foot clearance from the bottom of the bridge to the surface waters. It's supposed to be a 55-foot clearance separation. case you needed to get your yacht underneath the bridge, you know that now. And then reconfiguring the intersection of State Road 31 and State Road intersection to a grade-separated intersection. So this is right from FDOT's website. And then this is a depiction of the 6-lane configuration with bike lane, pedestrian walkways on each side of the road. And according to this, the minimum amount of right-of-way that they will be acquiring to construct that 6-lane design is about 175 feet. It's actually like 174 point something, but let's just call it 175 feet.
That's in addition to the right-of-way they already
No,
have?
they already have, I think it's 100, isn't it, Mike? 100 foot of right-of-way on State Road 31? Yeah, so they need 75 more feet. That's the minimum, because they're gonna need some for drainage and ponds and that type of thing. And they are planning on taking it from both sides of the road, but as I'm gonna walk towards the aerial. As they approach the river, they actually have to merge the road over to the east in order to build the span going across the bridge in order to maintain the existing bridge, and then it will merge back to the west. So the exact right, and I think that's one reason that the right-of-way, when Wayne had mentioned that the owner has not received a notice of this is what we're planning on taking, is because I still think they're trying to figure out exactly what they're gonna take and where the ultimate alignment of that road is gonna be. And then I'll provide this as our second exhibit, which is from their PDA stuff.
Okay, this is applicant exhibit 5.
I think that concludes my testimony. If you have any questions, or Neil, did I miss anything?
I don't have any more, thank you.
Thank you, very informative.
So that really concludes our principal presentation. I had a conclusionary slide all the way at the end here, that wrapping up with just another version of our master plan in case you had any questions regarding the master plan, and then just highlighting our consistency with the LEAD plan, consistency with the land development code, subject to the one deviation that we've requested. Open spaces will exceed those required by the land development code. You heard Mr. Banks testify there's no level of service issues. We've received our environmental resource permit. We don't have any residential immediate neighbors, and we agree with staff recommended conditions except for what I put in the 48-hour letter, which was to modify one of the conditions, which related to addressing the stormwater at the time of development order.
Well,
And-
section A1, that should be 520, not 521, correct?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, yes. Yep, absolutely. So in the 48-hour letter, I struck the reference to the maximum building height, just because I thought it was redundant since there's already a deviation and
It's addressing
condition.
Condition 2.
Right. And then under the stormwater management, condition number 6, you see we added a phrase that says at the end, as was reviewed and approved in the environmental resource permit. And we said that not to be redundant, but we didn't want staff or somebody else to come back and make a request that we model something that we hadn't anticipated as part of our overall permit that we have to be consistent with anyway. Staff, I think you'll hear that they're okay if you decide to add it, they're okay if you don't. We'd prefer to add it just for clarity.
The concern is that, as Mike Della told you, he had extensive communications and modeling and analysis with the Water Management District. And so we don't want somebody saying, we'll do the modeling again, and I don't agree with the district, and we get on a merry-go-round. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
I'll take a look at it.
I have some testimony as well, too.
And then, of course, on the deviation request, clarifying simply that the tract references are not
Yeah, I
they,
saw
but are.
that, that's all right.
But again,
Get that fixed.
easy to correct and nothing major here. So otherwise, we're very pleased with staff's recommendation and hope that you can support it too.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are ready for staff's presentation. Does anyone need a break, or can we keep going? Let's keep going. How are you?
Keep going.
When she tells me she needs a break, though, we break.
Yes, she's in charge. Okay.
Everything good?
Yeah. I'm all like, never mind. For the record, my name is Beth Workman. I am a principal planner in the zoning section. I have been accepted as an expert in Lee Plan and the Land Development Code, and I wish to be accepted as well today.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So the case before you today is DCI 2024-00006. It's Caloosahatchee Ridge RPD. It's approximately 102.15 acres. The request is to rezone from agricultural to residential plan development. The original application was for 521 residential dwelling units. The maximum building heights range from 35 feet to 75 feet, and staff is recommending approval with conditions. So this is the future land use map currently, and you can see the wetland lines and the suburban lines. That's the mustard color is suburban, and that determines how much density the applicant can get from the rezoning to residential plan development. The applicant did apply for map boundary determination, which was just signed this morning. And so I have that signed document for the applicant, as well as copies for the hearing examiner.
So this is the comprehensive plan map revision?
Yep, this is the map revision.
So that's staff 3?
This is staff exhibit 3. All right, so what changed? I mean, it looks like they get.
So if I take this and I go back, you can see that sliver right there. And there's some changes down in here. So you got a bigger piece of yellow down in this vicinity, and then a larger piece of suburban contiguous along the Caloosahatchee. So if I go back, this is what it looks like today.
Oh, I see.
And then you got this down here and that right there.
And now it's going to this.
And now it's going to that, yes, ma'am. So this is the importance of having a jurisdictional wetland determination at time of zoning review, and we just happen to have an environmental resource permit that was issued and was brought in post-sufficiency. And so that helps us determine accurately what's going on with the density because of the way that the Lee plan lays out suburban density versus wetland density for impacts to wetlands versus preservation. The site is also in the coastal high hazard area, and this is the map from our Lee plan. And this is going to come into importance later on when we talk about Lee Plan Policy 101.3.2. That policy limits development to the uplands. And so again, looking at what is an upland, what is a wetland, that's the importance of an ERP or a jurisdictional wetland determination at time of zoning. The applicant is required to do a community plan meeting with the community. They advertised and held a community plan meeting on March 14th, 2024 with the Caloosahatchee Shores community. And so doing the rezoning, there are set criteria that the applicant has to provide to staff during the review of a rezoning, and then the hearing examiner needs to hear during this venue to make sure that all of these items are met. So this is for just a straight rezoning, the Lee Plan, the Land Development Code, existing and future land use, compatibility, transportation, environmental, and then is the proposed use in the rezoning appropriate in this area, looking at the surrounding land uses, and then if there are any deviations, do they protect the public health and safety? So looking at density, going back to that map boundary determination that was just signed today, what that does with the jurisdictional wetland determination and the environmental resource permit is it tells us what we have for total state wetlands, because the Lee Plan requires county staff to protect state wetlands. County staff does not judge what's a state wetland or not. That's a function in the jurisdictional wetland determination. So 59.95 acres of total state wetlands. Impacted is 12.74 acres. This is straight from the ERP. And the preserved is 47.21. So taking all of that and plugging it into the calculation in the Lee Plan for suburban, preserved wetlands gets calculated for freshwater wetlands at a 6 unit per acre. So it takes on the suburban. And then the impacted wetlands is 1 dwelling unit per 20 acres of wetland impacts, in this case 0. So by right, according to the Lee Plan, the applicant could get 536 units. In the review of this, the applicant was asking for 521 dwelling units, and in this venue, it's 520. So staff is recommending 520 per what the applicant has testified today. And that meets Lee Plan policies for suburban 1.1.5, and then the wetland objective 1.5, as well as the policies 1.5.1, and then goal 124. So this is the future land use category new map from the map boundary determination, which was corrected and signed today, showing the new suburban areas and the lessening of the wetlands. And so is it compatible with the surrounding land uses utilizing the Lee Plan Goal 5 and Lee Plan policies 5.1.2, 0.5, and 0.6? And what these do is they're saying if you put in residential here, what is the adjacent uses? How are you screening it? Is the transportation enough in this area and the access enough to not negatively affect the surrounding land uses? So in looking at the surrounding land uses, and Mr. Arnold did a good job going through, he had it labeled better than I am, but it kind of goes through what is across the street and to the east and to the west and to the north and south. And what we have here, and I put the master concept plan on there, is we have 31 Oaks is directly across the street. And so they're lining up, and that little red spot is the old bar that was there. RJ's. And so what has happened is 31 Oaks has purchased RJ's. They're putting in an entryway. This is where their new entryway is going. This might be just a little bit askew. And so with the improvements going on 31, there's going to be what looks like to be an intersection being added into this area. And so that's with 31 Oaks. 31 Oaks was approved for single family and multifamily with a maximum building height from 35 to 45 feet in that region. That's important to mention because there's a deviation on the subject property asking to go to 75 feet along the river. So you can see how if this is built out, you have this big preserve right in here, and then there's separation between what is going to be an elevated 31 and what was approved over here. Moving further north, this MPD is Calusa Palms. This is limited to 35 feet. It has everything but the kitchen sink proposed in it. It has a marina, it has an ALF, it has a hotel, it has single family, like 50 units of single family, restaurants, liveaboards, the whole 9 yards. And then we have the existing commercial plan development with the restaurant, liveaboards, amenities for the folks utilizing the marina, and then we have boat storage happening here. Looking to the south, you have a commercial plan development that has a development order on it for a gas station. Not sure what's going to happen with this property with the improvements to 31. They may have to come in and change their footprint of their plan development when that happens. And then we have a single family use in here on a AG2 zoned property. This is all in an AG2 with some single family, and then you have the community facilities, which is the FP&L site with a palm tree farm, and then all the FP&L improvements. And there's the gas line going up through the subject property. Looking across the river, this was kind of important for staff because of the deviation to go to 75 feet. Staff analyzed what was existing over here. So you have an RM2 that's vacant. You have residential single family at a 35-foot height. And then you have multifamily townhomes that are roughly around 45 feet height. And the applicant did a good presentation on aerial footage into the site from this side. This is really what staff was worried about. And there were some questions during the public information meeting about what this interface was going to look like with the surrounding land uses. And with that little island of mangroves, the 50-foot natural waterway buffer, the ridge that is here, and then the 75 feet, and then the amount of preserve, you're really clustering that height into this vicinity. So we do find it compatible. And I have an excerpt of the building heights from the property development regulations right here that shows that multifamily is going to be 75 feet in the R1. And then you have R1 could be 35 feet, or I'm sorry, 35 feet for the amenity, and townhouses would be limited to 50 in the R1. So really it's just that multifamily building that was going to exceed and go to 75 feet in that region. So moving along into the LEED plan policies, there's a section in the LEED plan that talks about physical constraints. So when you go to rezone, especially to residential, we're looking at physical constraints, and in the LEED plan it gives flooding, natural disaster, things that could occur. And what that ties into is that coastal high hazard area. So this site is in the coastal high hazard. So we have two policies in tandem, 5.1.2, which is the physical constraints, and you have policy 101.3.2, which is the coastal high hazard and focusing your development in the uplands. And then you have the goal 21 with the Caloosahatchee shores, which is preserving the natural resources and the rural character of the area. What I have done is I have taken the site plan and I've overlaid it onto the coastal high hazard map. So you can see the mustard colored is where the coastal high hazard line is, and then the green or shadowed in gray is where that's outside of the coastal high hazard. This is important because you can kind of see how the applicant has focused the development into the uplands. So you have it along the ridge. You have some impacts happening down in here, but we have a South Florida Water Management District permit and a jurisdictional wetland determination within that that says, oh, but we're mitigating for those impacts to make them wetlands. So it is meeting that LEED plan policy for the mitigation to make those uplands in the future when it's developed. So looking at environmental, so wetland preservation, there's no indigenous on this site. And when a development comes in and it's a large project and it's residential, they must provide 40% open space. Of that open space, half must be represented, so 20%, in indigenous. This site doesn't have indigenous. So what the applicant is doing is providing all their open space in these wetlands, and they're preserving them. and any mitigation that goes on for on-site for the impacts that are occurring on-site to the wetlands are happening in these open space areas. So how does that work with our requirement? So all the open space is in the wetlands, so the 40% is all within these wetland areas. They're restoring them for water quality and storage compensation for any floodplain issues. There's a conservation easement that's required per the district permit. Building habitat for wildlife with the restoration and any seed sources that occur once the exotics are removed. And it's also providing a natural landscape buffer for along the right-of-way.
But this is going to be completely cleared. If everything's exotic, it's going to look like a farm field, right?
Correct. So at the time of development order, they're going to have to demonstrate that the type D buffer is meeting what's in our code. If they choose to do their restoration plants on here, restoration plants typically go in at a 6-foot tall tree. They're going to have to recognize that they need 10-foot tall in here if they use restoration plants. Because the ERP that's in the file does have a plan for restoration. The Army Corps is saying they don't want on-site restoration, they want off-site mitigation, but the ERP does have a list of planting material that's going to go back into this preserve. And I have that right here
And they're required to do that in exchange for the wetland impacts.
for their on-site mitigation.
Okay.
And so that was the importance about during the review for staff, we were asking the questions, is this salt? Is it fresh? Like, what is it? How are you restoring this? Do you have a plan in? And we kept on getting told, well, we don't need an ERP to do this. We don't need that. Well, we got an ERP. And that helps us decide, okay, yes, you are going to be fresh with the way the surface water management's going. The plant material that's being, established in here is borderline fresh with some brackish species that will tolerate a little bit of salt coming their way. And so this is the plan that the district has in that ERP. And so this is what's going to be replanted in this at grades, because this is a bowl. Like that whole area kind of dips down, and so they're going to be building up their roadways. So really you're going to get the upland buffering for the right-of-way, and then you're going to have all this restoration occurring. Because right now when you drive down 31, the bowl is still there, and you have vegetation, as you could see from the drone video that they had, or the drone photos that they had in their presentation. So that's all exotic right now, with some cypress and some live oak, and there's some water oak in there. But condition 5 of the zoning is to provide a restoration management plan during the development order to state what is going to be going into that wetland preserve. So we're going to need to see that at time of development order for that open space. And it's twofold, because it is the open space and it also is preservation to gain density on a suburban level. So we want to make sure that that is preserved. So looking at the open space, as I mentioned, it's 40% open space. The applicant's providing 48%. The landscape buffers, as we go around the master concept plan, there are no buffers provided or required to the north. No buffer provided at the northeast. These are all vacant AG2 properties. There's a 15-foot type D required along the east where the project abuts State Road 31, working all the way down to the south east. Along this bottom portion, which is cut off by this, I thought I always have it right, but I don't. It's a type B buffer. A type B as in boy buffer is similar to a type D. It's 15 feet, same amount of trees and shrubs. So this will be matching what goes in here. Because there is a single family residential home to the south on an AG2 property, so they have to provide the type B buffer. There's no buffer next to this vacant AG2 and no buffer against the industrial that's over in here.
What's the difference between the D and the B?
There's no difference. It's just what it abuts. So in the land development code, if you're residential, this has a multifamily function. Abutting a single family, it's a type B as in boy. And it's the same dimensions, same everything, differentiated between a right-of-way buffer. So they're meeting the land development code on all the landscape buffers to the north, south, and east. The natural waterway buffer was reviewed to make sure that a 50-foot natural waterway buffer was measured from the mean high water top of bank. The applicant provided this exhibit as a means for these buildings and the view to the off-site across the river dwelling units, but they have provided a nice cross-section of that natural waterway buffer in here, which is right about in here. So it shows where they're putting that. So that's another buffer established in conjunction with what the development is doing, and it serves.
And they're required to plant that area?
Yes, they're required to plant that, and there's a required number of trees and shrubs that go into that buffer, or you can save what you have. Now, as they mentioned, this is spoil. So there's going to be a need to put some vegetation in there meeting that code requirement.
And this all comes into play at DO time?
Development order time, all these things, unless they ask for a deviation, come into play. So looking at the stormwater, Mr. Dellett went over this in pretty thoroughly. I'm not going to belabor it. This is from the Natural Resources staff report, the LiDAR showing the ditches and where they're currently located, the branching off, and how it's severed here by this roadway, so it kind of moves this way and moves that way, and then the ditch going across here, that this is going to be moved down to here. So it kind of labels those off-site flows and then the existing overflow for the swale. This is all important because it meets certain land lead plan policies for maintaining your water on your site, not negatively affecting off-site. So whatever you're producing on your site, you're dealing with, you're pre-treating through your detentions, as you can see all the detentions on this map here, and then before it enters into the Caloosahatchee. So everything's pre-treated. And then condition 6 was written to make sure that the off-site flow capacity is maintained during and following construction so that there's no negative effects. The applicant is requesting to put an add-on to the back end of this condition, and I'm going to get into it at the very end because I have the 48-hour letter changes at the very end. Staff, it's a little clunky what they have in their recommendation because we still have unknowns happening with, they're putting in stormwater, they're assessed in their district permit is looking at ditches along this region that could be impacted by a taking. We don't know yet. Staff from our point of this whole thing, with the taking of the 31, we've been contacted by the appraiser for FDOT. We've been asked for all zoning cases up and down 31. So they've received all those zoning cases to assess the land. This particular property was assessed for AG2. The appraiser contacted me. I shared the email with the applicant saying, I need these documents because now we have to go back in and assess it for residential and look at what the improvements are happening along this region because of the widening. So by adding that statement on the back end, the ERP could get modified when this comes in. The master concept plan may need to be modified. So we can kind of talk about that at the end because I've got the 48 at the end, but that's where staff is coming from, and we kind of defer to the HECS on that. But for the purposes of this slide, they are pre-treating on site. They are meeting policy 126.1.4 for pre-treatment, improved surface water flows, and lake levels at or above existing conditions. And then the treatment to meet policy 60.4.1 and 60.4.2 for the water quality and nutrient removal. Plenty of detention basins, lakes. The preserve is going to act as a filtration. Once the exotics are out and it's restored, the native plants will tolerate and filter. Looking at transportation, Mr. Banks went thoroughly over it. He kind of has his finger on the pulse on the State Road 31 widening, as well as what they will allow. It's important to note that we have two access points here. And then we also have another access point which got cut off to Wildwood as an option for interconnect to that CPD at the south that currently has a DO that has a gas station approved on it, which may need to change depending on that intersection improvements. And Lee County TOT recognized that at time of development order, there would need to be compliance with the FDOT improvements, and staff will review that to make sure that what staff receives during the development order review is matching what FDOT is proposing as well. So I kind of did a blow up of that little interconnect there for Wildwood. Public facilities are being met. It's important to note that in the public facilities letter for utilities, 544 multifamily residential units were assessed for that, so they're over. So public facilities met, police, fire, emergency. Mr. Arnold did a good job with the map showing where everything is for schools and access to parks. And so looking at the 48, we agree that it is redundant, that can be removed. This will need to be changed. That was not in the 48-hour letter, but 520. This is the one where we're deferring to the hearing examiner, as was reviewed and approved in the environmental resource permit. Staff rarely cites the South Florida Water Management District permits and conditions just because that's a state function all on its own. They're going to have to demonstrate that regardless during the DO review, whatever that permit is.
Yeah, I'm not clear on what we gain with this clunky addition to the sentence. I feel as though this will be addressed at the development order stage. The sentiment is clearly stated in the first part, and I don't know, I'll look at it, but I don't think it adds anything, especially since it's something that's going to come into play at the DO stage.
Yes, ma'am. That's why we're deferring. One way or the other, staff was.
Plus, there could be changes because of the take and everything. So I don't know how much in the weeds I want to get with this. I'll look at it, though.
Okay,
I
thank you.
understand their concern.
Yep, I understand their concerns too, from what was evaluated, and it sounds like it was evaluated in depth at the state level. And so this one was K2, K1. Early on in the rendition, it was called something else. So staff agrees with that one. And then in conclusion, the applicant is meeting 34-145 in the supplemental policies for going to a plan development. And we recommend approval with conditions.
Okay, so I have a question. My reading of the request and the conditions is that there could be high rises, there may not be high rises. The pod next to the Caloosahatchee allows for single family or townhouse or whatever development. So really, this is wide open. Only they're not going to put the high rise, obviously, on the portion that's next to the road. That's not called out.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So they really have a lot of flexibility here. This can go in a lot of directions.
Yeah, so this kind of building heights kind of lays it out of what is being allowed in the different R1, R2. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility. And from a staff perspective, with the unknowns with 31 and the changes that may need to take place with an MCP, that is sensible. Like, it gives us room to work on some changes when the taking finally, we've been talking about this taking through the whole entire review process.
You know, my desire for the applicant would be to avoid the need to come back here after the take, that there'd be enough flexibility in what's been addressed in the conditions and deviations or no deviations, whatever, that any change can be addressed administratively with staff.
Yeah, right now, the way that staff was reviewing this was the right-of-way buffer, and through a taking, that is allowed to be through an administrative action, so,
Okay, good.
and that's it.
Very good. That completes the parties' presentations. I'm ready to accept input from the public if the public wishes to speak. Herbert Noack? Okay, let's let Beth.
I'm asleep
at
at
the
the wheel
submission.
today. Here's my PowerPoint. Sorry. I haven't done this in a while.
PowerPoint is staff exhibit 4. Good afternoon, thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Nowak. I own according to your map, I own the AG2 property to the north, the pie shaped,
To the north on the river?
to the north on a river.
Okay,
I don't like to see, I have a disposition against any development of any properties, of changes of zonings and stuff, because my view is that we have development run amok in this county and also other counties. We need to preserve the land for other uses. We do not have in this county a right to farm law. If we had a right to farm law, this meeting wouldn't be happening, because it prohibits developers from coming in and taking ag land and trying to turn it into developments. I know you talked about the 75-foot height. I think it's a little bit high, but it depends what they're going to do. They may not build any high rises, they may build high rises out there. I think we need to maybe look at some of this stuff after 31 is built, and maybe, because I think it comes down to, we have a lot of, the world's been here before we got here, it's going to be here after we got here. And the earth is known to fix itself, where people have made mistakes and other things have made mistakes. And I really believe that we need to look at development more responsibly than what we're doing. I just heard that we just completed a big Everglades restoration project, which took many years and millions of dollars, where man made a mistake. So just because we think we're doing right doesn't mean we're doing right. And I hope that maybe the county and planners and county commissioners will start looking into these problems that some of these land use plans have created. Because there should have been 50 people here or more. I'm the only one that showed up. I got a letter. I know that you're supposed to, as part of this, letters were sent to surrounding property owners. I think that also that regulation needs to be extended to more property owners. Or a case where if a property owner doesn't show up, he's automatically considered a vote of no to these projects. Because another thing is, we could have a depression, which I feel is coming. Who's going to occupy these units after they're built? I think we're already starting to see a slump. The economy's not good. We could have a war. And then what's going to happen? We may not be around anymore if something really seriously happens. So why are we destroying land, and especially what I hear about the clearing of the wetlands? I know we never do it, but I believe there should be a stipulation that that wetland has to be manually cleared by labor, no machines. Because when you go in there with machines, you tear everything up. Now you got raw soil, wind blows it all over the place, and then you've got a lot more plants to plant. I understand getting rid of the exotics, but do it in a manner where you haven't stripped the land. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Oh,
Mr. Novak, before you leave, can I ask you?
Yes.
You have a AG2 land as well. Are you farming your land?
No.
Is it just passive?
We have some mobile homes on the property. We were renting them years ago.
Okay, but right now it's just.
No, it's not. And I may turn that into cattle or get some kind of ag exemption in there. You know, see what happens.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public present? If not, I'm going to close public input. I'm going to go back to staff and the applicant for any concluding remarks they may have.
I want to go back to condition 6. I heard what the staff said, and I heard what Madam Hearing Examiner said, but if I look at section 10-321, which is the surface water management section of chapter 10, when you're getting a development order, what's required is an ERP, and the county relies on the district for the ERP and meeting those criteria. So the testimony you heard is they've been in the process for more than a year working on the ERP, and the court takes twice as long, and they're close to the end. And Mr. Dell testified that they had to do modeling and a lot of analysis and reanalysis. And so since the county doesn't have any independent rules and they rely on the district and they tell you you have to go get all your state and federal permits, what modeling under what criteria are we going to do that's different from what we had to do for the district? And if it's different, what happens if someone decides they don't like what the district did? How do we avoid the catch-22, especially when 10-321 says we rely on the district? That's the concern.
The code says we rely on the district. That's period. That's the end of it.
Well, then we don't need condition 6. I guess that's where I am.
Now, condition 6 is to make sure that the maintenance of during and following construction. What you just said is that during the DO, we rely on the ERP. Well, yeah. But what was been put in here is as was reviewed and approved. A permit mod could happen. If we're basing on what was reviewed, that's past tense.
Okay, forget the language we put in. Just for a moment, what we were trying to do is avoid the situation I just outlined, because what the condition says is we're not going to give you a DO until the developer provides a stormwater report with models and calculations demonstrating that off-site flow conveyance capacity will be maintained. We can have Mike, would you come up?
Okay, hang on a second. I don't want to get in the weeds on this because I think this is a mountain is being made over a molehill. So really this condition, although inartfully worded, is basically saying that the development order submittals must include the submittals must include these models and calculations demonstrating that off-site flow conveyance capacity will be maintained during and following construction, period. What could possibly go wrong with that? You've got the ERP.
What could possibly
The ERP permit is going to be submitted with the development order submittals that confirms that your models achieve this goal. So what are we doing?
That's what we think is supposed to happen. But we don't know that somebody's going to go, well, I don't agree with what you
Does that
said.
even happen anymore?
So what happens is the state has said that we cannot hold up a development order because you don't have your state permit. So what we do is we issue a development order and we say you can't before the vegetation removal permit is issued, which allows you to go in and start clearing. We need to make sure that what you've submitted to the district matches what we have approved during the DO. What this condition is saying is prior to the issuance of a local development order, not mentioning the ERP, that we need the stormwater report to have models and calculations, because I can't say prior to the issuance of a development order, we must have a South Florida Water Management
So
District.
this is a run around that requirement.
We don't say South Florida Water Management District permit.
Okay.
So basically, you can remove the whole clause prior to issuance of a local development order and just say the development order submittals must include this information, period.
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay,
That's fine.
that's what we'll do. I don't want to make it a bigger thing than it is.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to avoid a future problem because, but now that she's explained why she's doing it, I understand.
All right, and I just want to be assured that there's enough flexibility in all this, that if there is a take, because we don't know, it might be from the other side, it might be negligible to the point where it doesn't affect this plan, but that there's something administratively that addresses. Okay, very good. I feel well prepared to draft a recommendation in this case. If anyone would like to make concluding remarks, I'm open to hear them.
I feel like we've discussed the one item, otherwise I believe we're in agreement.
Yeah. I don't feel as though we need to leave the record open for any redraft. I'm clear on how you prefer to see this condition drafted. I feel confident I can accomplish that. So I'm going to close the record completely, and I will prepare a recommendation to the board, I don't know, 2.5 weeks maybe.
Okay.
And hopefully you'll have a board hearing in early March.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.